Hi everybody, you are on MGG. I'm Augustin. Today I will be receiving Maximilian Peter Schmidt. He is the LEC's commissioner. Together we are going to talk about some unexpected results, the pandemic of course, and what might or might not be in store for the future of the LEC. Max, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Augustin.
So, the season is over, the playoffs are done, and G2 did not make it. Were you actually surprised by this outcome?
I mean, frankly, I think everybody would be lying if they said that they weren't surprised. I think going into the season, a lot of the experts and analysts had G2 as the top tier team, going out of the offseason with Reckless replacing Perks on the roster. And then obviously G2 is also a team that until they're down and out, you really don't think that they're out, right? Like even when they lost in the upper bracket prior, that was kind of a scenario we already gotten used to over the last year, right? But I think most people were surprised for sure that they lost on the Saturday and then were not in the finals for the first time in the LEC's history.
Yeah, first time since they participated. It's pretty crazy actually. Do you think Mad Lion's gonna fare well at MSI?
Absolutely. I think they have a very unique playstyle. They play incredibly aggressively, which is also a huge benefit from my perspective. Obviously, they have rookie talent on their team as well, which it's really hard to judge how they will perform. But as of now, we are the reigning MSI champions still, and of course, I expect them to stay that way.
Yeah, of course. So the main thing I'm actually interested in talking with you about is the pandemic. It has completely reshaped the way you and your team work. On one hand, having half the world stuck at home has to be good for viewership, but on the other hand, you cannot make any big physical events, and we know that those crystallize the audience and build hype around the game. So tell me, in the end, has the economic impact of COVID been beneficial or detrimental to the LEC?
I think it's a mixed bag, as you already mentioned, right? Obviously, we've seen we just finished up the split, and we have seen incredible growth in viewership. Over the course of a regular season, we had more than 50% increase in our viewership, which is absolute insane. And that obviously is not only due to the pandemic, but also due to the team doing a fantastic work, hyping up the entire season, ensuring that every single week people know exactly what the stakes are and are incentivized to tune in. All the additional publishing pieces we do, the sponsor integration that we do, and these kind of things, right? That being said, obviously with the pandemic, as you mentioned, while you obviously have a bit of an easier time getting eyeballs on your product, there are a lot of difficulties when it comes to, for example, exposure for the teams, exposure for your potential partners, the partners of the teams. But I'm happy to say that we're in a really, really strong partnership model with our teams and only all the sponsors that we have for the leagues that we also treat as partners. And together with them, we were able to work through these challenges. We were very, very direct and collaborating with them on all these aspects to ensure that the deliverables that they were expecting were still being realized in a way that was beneficial to them, while obviously being within reasonable scope of what we could muster given the circumstances. And frankly, also our partners have been incredibly understanding throughout the entire period. And I'm very, very thankful that we have both the sponsors and partners for the league, as well as the partner teams that we're working with.
All right, talking about your strong partnership with the teams, a few teams, like Schalke 04, have said publicly that they've been having a lot of financial troubles because of COVID. Do you plan on doing something to help them?
I think on this one particularly, it makes sense to kind of look at the specific case, right? In Schalke's case, obviously their parent company is a football club, and football in itself obviously had major struggles when it comes to adjusting for the pandemic, right? So I would not personally draw any conclusions from this specific case and its implications towards anything that is specific towards League of Legends or the LEC in particular, right? Because it really is dependent on the parent business, and it's a conversation which they also have been very open about, that is driven from that side and not at all from the esports side.
I perfectly hear you. The problem doesn't come from the LEC, but from the general situation in football. But the thing is, if they are your partners, that means if they have to face specific problems, maybe it's part of the LEC's job to come and find specific solutions for them.
Yeah, we're working with them very closely. We're having weekly syncs together with Schalke in particular to work through the challenges, right? I cannot comment in detail in regard to what those pertain, but we're obviously in very, very close contact with them, and we're working through the challenges and exploring all potential avenues for the future as well together with them.
Yeah, all right. So tell me, recently a few websites have reported that your viewership numbers are up 35% compared to last year. Do you confirm those numbers?
Just like looking at let me quickly pull it up right here, actually. Looking at the overall report that we got for the LEC for the entirety of the split, I think we're up, almost 35% for the AMA. I'm looking at 33% here, but the hours watched are up more than 40%, which is actually incredible, and even higher. So yeah, very, very positive growth throughout the year. Very, very proud of everybody working on the show and making that happen.
Yeah, 40% is really impressive, and it's important to remind everyone that the LEC does not need COVID to have that kind of growth. It's actually the kind of growth we've seen from 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020. But could you give us an estimation of how much of that growth you have to attribute to COVID?
It's really hard to say, frankly, right? I want to be honest and transparent about that as well. There's certainly a factor there, but we have seen two-digit growth throughout the last 2 years despite COVID, right? Like looking at the growth from even 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 2018, and in every single year throughout most of our metrics, we were up anywhere from like 15 to 30%, right? So if I take that as a baseline and look at an average of like 20 to 25% gain, I would say, then I'd probably say maybe it's 10%-ish that are gained from that. But this is really a guesstimation, and frankly, I would say nobody can make that make that call decisively.
So you finally brought in a few teams in studio for the playoffs. How much harder was it in terms of all the rules and regulation compared to just having the casting crew?
It was incredibly difficult, honestly, and I'm incredibly proud of what the team achieved and how they managed to pull that off in the pandemic. When I look at this, and frankly, everybody working on the LEC feels the same way as I do, I'm 100% certain. We want to have the players at the studio, right? But we're not going to do that at the risk of their health or the risk of the team health of their respective team managers and their staff, or our team working the show. And managing to pull this off in a way that is completely controlled and safe was a mammoth project, right? That was a behemoth of a task to do, but we wanted to do it because we wanted to like provide this shining light of normality and this beacon of hope for everybody watching, and give everybody the opportunity to like tune out from everything that's going on, because obviously that's a major factor for everybody, right? And it's weighing down everyone. And we wanted to really like make this something special, and I'm really proud that we were able to do this, and I'm really, really glad that we are in a partnership with our teams that enables us to do this, right? Because this is not only on us, this is also largely on the teams working through all the requirements that we put on them. A lot of the players that participate in the playoffs, at least some of them, haven't even seen the studio or have been there throughout their career so far in the LEC, right? Because they are rookies or they came from European Masters or the ERLs. And being able to have a show like this with like zero incidents and zero issues, despite the circumstances and despite that being the case, I think is incredible job from the team.
So just so the people who've never seen a studio in their life can realize, could you give us an estimate of how many people have to be in the studio when it's only the casting crew compared to when you have teams on site?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you rough numbers, right? But like the bare bones crew that we had at the very start, and we iterated upon this, right? Like when we first started, we have like, I think 20 to 30 people. That's like the skeleton crew, as we would call it, right? Like the absolute minimum for the production of the show, right? We obviously expanded upon that where we could. But when you add teams, it's not only the players, right? They bring their staff. So we're thinking like a dozen people per team, right? That's participating, though it's already 24 people there. Then you need to add additional stuff from our end as well. You need to have referees there. You need to have player management there to ensure that people actually like facilitate the transition processes, right? We want to have additional security on site, these kind of things, right? So I cannot give you concrete numbers, but you can see that we're talking about a significant increase, and that's also the reason why we were only able to do this for the playoffs, because we only had 2 teams on site. When you do this with 10 teams during the regular season, this becomes a an even bigger behemoth to solve. And frankly, I don't think, given the current circumstances, it would be a wise decision, because every single team, obviously, we adds an additional risk factor and adds additional uncertainty to a point. And it makes it less plannable, and plannability is obviously safety in this regard.
Considering how hard it seems to be to have teams on site, do I have to understand that there will be no audience during the entirety of the year? Or is it something you'd like to do at some point during the summer split?
We would definitely like to do it. Kind of the priority list I'm looking at is that I want to have teams back, and then I want to have the teams with their staff back as much as possible, right? Because currently we're also like limiting who they can bring to what we consider like, and obviously in conversation with the teams, to a minimum that is justifiable and that doesn't impact their performance whatsoever. And then the next step actually is bringing back the press, and then the last step in the puzzle would be bringing back the fans to the studio as well. First and foremost, obviously, we want to serve the players around the world and across the world, everybody that is enjoying the product from home, from the safety and from isolation. And from our perspective, it's the most important that we serve them the best way possible. It's awesome to have fans at the studio and to have an audience, but we wouldn't do that at the expense of security and safety. And every single time that you add an external party that you're not directly working with and have a contextual relationship with, that obviously is also a bit of a different beast and also comes with different kinds of regulations.
All right, let's talk about casting rights for a second. In France, currently only one company is allowed to broadcast the LEC, and it's OTP. Would you consider the possibility of different channels having the rights, like it's been done at some point in Korea, for example?
It's something that is always a consideration. From our perspective, though, I think it's really important to outline that in our very, very complex ecosystem that we have in Europe, that we are incredibly proud of, we also need to not only think about our sustainability and how we look into the future, we also need to think about the sustainability of our partners, right? So if a company is operating the French ERL for us, as you mentioned in your example, then we want to ensure that that partner is set up in the best way possible to ensure that they can do so and also can do so sustainably for the future to come, right? And if we were to take away exclusivity from a partner, which is a potential option, that means a lot though, right? That potentially reduces their viewership in half, right? If we cut those in half and serve two partners at the same time, right? And we want to ensure that they are set up for success. We are working together very, very closely together with all our ERL partners to understand the markets better, to understand the current challenges where they're currently experimenting. I think the French ERL particularly has shown to great success this year what you can achieve with experimentation, together with the co-streaming that they kind of allow on the local level within certain parameters. I think that was very, very interesting to see how that can manifest on the ERL side. Kcorp obviously being the primary driver there as well. And I think though, more fundamentally speaking, as you mentioned, when it comes to a holistic overarching ecosystem co-streaming approach, I see a lot of concerns when it comes to this on the sustainability side, right? And I want to be very open. Money is always like kind of a difficult topic to discuss openly and publicly. But from my perspective, it's really important that people understand that we're not doing this because we think it's worse in the short term or the interim. We think that we need to ensure the longevity of the ecosystem, and we always need to think 3 to 5 years ahead, and what anything that we do now, how that affects the future in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, okay. You've talked about Karmine Corp. This is going to be my last question, actually. You've seen the huge numbers they bring into the LFL, not just because of CoCast, but also just naturally by participating in the league. If they were to apply for the LEC at some point, is it an application that would interest you?
Frankly, like anybody that is interested in potentially participating in the LEC should always reach out to us. Essentially, what we do, and I'm going to also be transparent about that, we have a list of potentially interested parties, and I'd be more than happy to have them on that list as well, where we essentially ensure that in a future potential scenario where the league is expanding, or in a scenario like currently is the case, as Schalke is transparent about, right? A team is, due to unforeseen circumstances, in a position where they potentially have to sell a slot, we are catering to a list of potential interested applicants, so we can rely on that and basically connect the two parties, right? In this case, Schalke, we were able to connect with a lot of interested parties who were interested in potentially acquiring an LEC slot, and obviously also for a potential expansion in the future that is also super interested. And I'm definitely like interested in all kinds of teams, especially from my perspective, that have the experience on the regional level. That's a big positive for sure.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Max. It's been lovely having you. This interview is going to be available on the website and on all of our YouTube channels. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for more interviews coming soon. Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.